Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Carry Ethernet Academy's Carry Ethernet 2.0 Demystified. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Craig Easley. I'm the founder and Dean of Academic Affairs here at the Carry Ethernet Academy. I've founded the Carry Ethernet Academy to provide in-depth technical instruction for MEF concepts and Carry Ethernet back in 2007, and have now built the Carry Ethernet Academy into the leading accredited training provider with the MEF. And we week in, week out, we are teaching Carry Ethernet professionals how to successfully prepare for and pass the MEF-CECP exam. My colleague Isabel Morenci is actually out teaching today, so it'll just be me on the leading the discussion this morning. So the outline for today's presentation was really talk about the Carry Ethernet evolution from 1.0 to 2.0, and I'll illustrate all the new capabilities with CE 2.0 with a use case that will help point out how everything fits together in terms of the new capabilities and the new service definitions. And then lastly, towards the end of the presentation, I've got just an update on the Carry Ethernet Certified Professional Program, progress to date, and what's in store with the program in the future. So, without any further ado, let's proceed into the presentation. So, those of you who've been working with Carry Ethernet for a while will recognize this slide. This is the 5 attributes of Carry Ethernet, and I'm not going back into what is ancient history. I think this wheel was devised by the MEF marketing committee back in 2004 or 5, but it does serve as a nice categorizer for putting all of the new capabilities with respect to CE 2.0. So one of the most earliest things that the MEF did was to standardize Ethernet service definitions. And now with CE 2.0, the newest service definition, the e-access service, including both a private line and virtual private line version of a wholesale e-access service designed to connect an ENNI to an out of franchise or or type 2 wholesale network where they have one or more subscribers connecting in. The e-access service for the first time is the first service definition defined by the MEF for a wholesale service, and is the first service defined running between an ENNI and a UNI. And that introduces a whole new level of capabilities and complexity with respect to how OVC services are provisioned and configured between ENNIs and UNIs. This new e-access service allows us to meet the second, going clockwise around the wheel here, around the second attribute of Carry Ethernet, scalability, because it provides a standard way for service providers to scale their networks beyond where they have a footprint. So working with third-party providers, they can go out of franchise and offer, or off a footprint and offer the same high-quality Carry Ethernet services that they're offering on their own networks. With respect to reliability, there's been a lot of work done in the MEF that has sparked projects in ITU and IEEE with respect to service reliability. In particular, the G8031 and G8032 protection mechanisms, which are service aware, that have come out of the ITU, were directly were spawned from MEF interest in having a service aware reliability mechanisms for Ethernet based upon other standard service management routines. And that leads us to 7 o'clock on the wheel, the service management. With CE 2.0, there has been an addition of a tremendous number of new capabilities with respect to service operations administration and maintenance tools, or Service OAM as it's called. Both on the fault management side with tools to monitor connectivity of Ethernet services end to end or across sections of the network, with respect to introducing new troubleshooting tools that give us the layer 2 equivalent of IP traceroute and ping. And then with Service OAM performance management, we have a whole wealth of standard ways to measure the performance of the service and measure EVC performance metrics using standard tools. So we've long had the EVC performance metrics. They go back as early as MEF-10 and have been revised in MEF-10.2 and MEF-10.2.1 and are under additional revision with the MEF-10.3 project as we speak. But now with the service management and as Service OAM PM tools give providers a way to use standard measurement techniques to gather that information. And lastly, the quality of service. And this is probably the biggest area of that CE 2.0 covers. With the publication of MEF 23.1, which goes into defining high, medium, and low classes of service, and then coming up with default values for how those services are marked, and a couple of different ways to mark the in profile or traffic that's colored green by a bandwidth profile versus traffic that is out of profile and has been colored yellow using the MEF 2 rate 3 color bandwidth profile algorithm. The MEF 23.1, the multi-class of service document, also defines performance tiers, and I'll get into a little bit more about that. But for the first time, we have objectives that are defined for certain distances of the network. So let's move forward. Whereas CE 1.0 was mostly dealt with our two basic service definitions: E-line, which included both Ethernet private line or EPL services, and Ethernet virtual private line or EVPL services, and E-LAN, based upon the technical specs of MEF 10, which included 1 and 5. Those were the predecessor documents to MEF 10, and then MEF 6. So that really tested standards, service standardization, and that was, and we had a certification program that was built around that many of you may have heard before as being called MEF 9 and 14. The MEF 9 and 14 certification is now, has now been referred to as MEF 1.0. MEF 2.0 brings just a number of new capabilities and concepts to the table, including the multi-costs, which I just mentioned, that came out of MEF 23.1, the manageability, which is all of the Service OAM fault management and performance management tools, and really give us an end-to-end service view of the network, and the interconnect, which is our new e-access service that is for the first time a service definition between an E and an I and a uni, and in particular the uni is now that we're using as the reference point is a uni type 2. So you can just see the number of specifications that are included in MEF 2.0, going from 6.1 to 10.2, MEF 23.1, which is a cost document, MEF 26.1, which is E and I phase 2, MEF 30.1, which is the Service OAM fault management, MEF 33, which is the e-access service definition, and MEF 35, which is the Service OAM PM document. So there's just been a ton of new work that has gone on in the MEF since the certification program for 9 and 14 was launched almost 10 years ago. So if we look at a high-level overview of the CE 2.0 architecture and framework, you can see the unis and the EVC services running end-to-end across these two operator Metro Ethernet networks, and the EVC services, are the same as they ever have. But now we have a certification program designed to test them, unlike they've ever been tested before. So there has not been a certification program to test Uni Type 2, for example. There has never been a certification program to test E-tree services, which are based upon rooted multipoint EVC. So now all of that, those EVC service types that had been defined after the initial CE 1.0 certification program was launched are now in scope for CE 2.0 testing, as are a whole realm of new OVC-based services. So now, if you look into this EVC that's being delivered between the two unis, we can actually see that it's decomposed into two operator virtual connections, which run, which start at the uni and terminate on the E&I in each operator's network. And then we have our e-access EPL on the right there that's continuing the service that's being offered by the service provider on the left out to a remote uni in an off-net or type 2 networking arrangement. So this whole new concept of OVC-based services, which can be used to extend the reach of a service provider to extend the service out to unis that they couldn't get to before, is an important aspect of CE 2.0. So looking at all of the MEF defined services now, I mentioned that the initial certification program was basically EPL, EVPL, and ELAN, and it wasn't even explicit with the ELAN service whether what was being certified was an EPLAN or EVPLAN. That was sort of left up to the discretion of the network or device under test and the test lab. But now we have explicit certification or test plans for EPLAN, EVPLAN. Even the EPL and EVPL have been enhanced to include enhanced uni attributes, things like layer 2 control protocol handling and support for different MTU sizes as defined by the MEF. Both ingress and now egress bandwidth profiles are part of the EVPL specification. So there, even with the oldest MEF defined services, there are a number of new attributes and capabilities that are part of CE 2.0. And then brand new to CE 2.0 is EP tree and EVP tree, which although they've been around for a while, there's never been any formal conformance testing for rooted multipoint EVCs. And now there is actually a certification program designed to test that. There's also a tremendous amount of interest in using EP tree and EVP tree for multi-point connectivity. It's kind of a kinder, gentler ELAN service that gives the service provider a lot more manageability and control over how the customer is connected. And then lastly, the brand new e-access service, the MEF-33, was only defined about a little over a year ago. Right on the heels of MEF-33, MEF-34, the abstract test suite for conformance was published, and now now the MEF has for the first time a way to certify OVC-based services that start at an external network-to-network interface and at a uni type 2. And also for the first time, since there's never been a certification program for anything to deal with EN&I and Uni Type 2, all of that work is also being certified. So it's not just the services that run between the two, but the capabilities of those two interfaces, the Uni and the EN&I. So looking at in detail at the Carrier Ethernet 2.0 capabilities, we have the multi-COS, which is multiple classes of service and standard performance objectives for each class of service. There are standard class of service labels that are marked in the packet headers. There are standard class of service and color identifiers, as I briefly mentioned earlier. There are ways to mark traffic when it's in profile according to the bandwidth regulator or bandwidth profile, as well as out of profile. The MEF came up with 4 performance tiers under which performance metrics and objectives have been developed for frame delay variation, frame delay range, frame loss, and then and how to compute availability on those. From a manageability perspective, here we're talking about those end-to-end Service OAM tools that give us the ability to measure traffic management and traffic and capacity management on the network. So that includes Service OAM FM with the connectivity management tools, the loopback and link trace utilities that allow us to verify and validate layer 2 connectivity, as well as the Service OAM performance monitoring tools, which give us delay measurement metrics and loss measurement messages to measure to generate synthetic traffic in order to measure the performance on the network. There are much more better or much more well-defined bandwidth profile with specific granularities for the capacity of the interface. There is testing for support for MTU sizes and proper configuration of the maximum transmit unit size at both the UNI, at the EVC, the ENNI, and at the OVC. And there have been a number of enhancements and new capabilities with respect to layer 2 control protocol handling, how you handle different types of traffic, how traffic that needs to be peered with is handled as well. And then lastly, the interconnect, which standardizes wholesale access services. So this is extending the service provider coverage off net using an ENNI to a UNI. So this gives us two new services, an e-access private line service and an e-access virtual private line service, and new constructs. The EVC services defines the frame and tag formats. It defines bandwidth profiles and the classes of service that are that we can use for those, and then of course referring back to MEF-23.1 end-to-end performance objectives for those service types. So here's a drill down on the standard class of service, and just a visual that shows the performance tiers and objectives. So there are 4 performance tiers. Performance tier 1, which is the shortest reach, that's called the metro tier. Performance tier 2 is slightly longer than that. I think we move up from a few hundred kilometers to almost 1,000 kilometers in performance tier 2. Performance tier 3 is a continental performance tier, so here now we're in the tens of thousands of kilometers. And then performance tier 4 is a global network where we have are covering really networks that span the globe. So in each performance tier, there are 3 performance objectives for high, medium, and low quality of service, and they're broken down for the 5 metrics that are measured and that are distance dependent. So frame delay, mean frame delay, interframe delay variation, which is is synonymous with the old TDM term jitter. There's frame delay range, and then we have our frame loss ratio, which is also a percentage that's here. Coming up with this chart and the actual numbers that have gone in there is really a good piece of work that the MEF has done, in that it was for the first time service providers working with equipment vendors, and then the MEF using the results from literally the test results from hundreds of different devices and hundreds of services that are being delivered over those devices to come up with achievable, realistic, and feasible numbers with respect to the objectives that are in here. So now what I'd like to do is go over a use case and talk about how all of this fits together, and just kind of highlight it from a practical use perspective. So we have an American bank headquartered in New York City. They have a remote office in Paris that needs access to all of the applications that are running in the New York office. They have a backup site in New Jersey. So just across the river, they have a disaster recovery or a hot backup site where they're backing up their service, and they basically could move the operation over to this disaster recovery location, if needed. The applications that they're running are telepresence, which is a video conferencing application. Their customer relationship management, or CRM system, that allows them to that's really their customer database and how they do all of their commercial activities. And then they have internet access as well. So the requirements from a cost perspective are high quality service for the telepresence application, and this gets difficult as we probably want to link the American bank in New York with the remote office in Paris over another third-party operator's network. A medium quality service for the CRM, remote access, and backup, and then a low quality or a best effort service for the internet access. So looking at the multiple classes of service, so here's the New York headquarters is on the left, and the 3 disk drums there are the database or backup system. The monitors in the middle represent the telepresence, and then the CRM icon is down there on the bottom. So those are the 3 applications that are being hosted in New York, and over their private cloud, they basically are have an extension to a New York ISP that's giving them with an EVPL in performance tier 1, because that they're right there on the island with them to get out to connect, provide them layer 2 connectivity to the ISP's router for internet access and out to the public cloud. They have another EVPL with a class of service of medium that's going to connect the New Jersey hot backup site, including backup for their CRM data, as well as the application as well, and even the telepresence application could be also hosted from New Jersey if need be. And then our long haul EPL service, and now because this is we're talking about a branch in New York and a branch office in Paris. We don't want to have to coordinate if Paris decides to create a new EVC one day, or send or create a new CEVLAN that we want to attach and share with the New York headquarters. So we're going to have an Ethernet private line service that requires less coordination between the bank and the service provider. We potentially also might want to run spanning tree or other layer 2 control protocols between those locations, as is required by the IT department, and how the guys have set up their internal network there. So here over this EPL, we've got a medium class of service type that's going to be carrying the CRM traffic back and forth, and potentially access to the to the internet, and as well they'll have a high class of service defined on that same EPL. So here we're doing our class of service types per class of service, not on the whole EPL. So we've got a high class defined for the telepresence application. So we've got standard classes of service being delivered over standard performance tiers with standard performance objectives for each one of those mapped to the correct tier. From a manageability perspective, we're not really going to do anything with the best effort low class of service. This is basically we get what we get from the New York ISP. It's a performance tier 1. So we whatever the customer was wanting to contract for in terms of capacity with the ISP, that's what they get. There's certainly no need to share layer 2 control protocol information back and forth between the two, and in fact, we're not even going to be worried about monitoring the service. So there's no performance monitoring that's going to be set up there. However, on the medium service, we want to make sure that the backup site and that our access between the New York and the hot standby site is up and reliable. So by using our Service OAM fault management tools, we can define a maintenance endpoints in New York and in New Jersey, and start verifying layer 2 connectivity. If we also want to verify the performance objectives that are specified in the service level specification that mentioned in the SLA that we've got for this service, the customer can also create, or as well as the service provider can create Service OAM monitoring points between New York and New Jersey, and monitor the quality of that of the service that's delivering that CRM application. And then lastly, between New York and Paris, we want to do the same thing. We're going to create Service OAM instances and monitor both the high and the medium class of service and the bandwidth profile for those, as well as the layer 2 CP map that's between the two locations. So this view gives us some insight into how the Service OAM tools can be used to effectively monitor all of these different classes of service. So we sort of built on the previous slide with some service management capabilities that are going to be used to validate the ongoing performance of the services that are being delivered. And then lastly, our standard interconnect with e-access. So here, I'm only going to look at the one part of the service that's being extended across the by a third party, in this case, the French operator. So I've got at my uni in New York, I'm basically terminating my EPL service at the E&I that's between the American service provider and the French service provider. However, since I can only have one class of service per OVC per my OVC is the part of that EPL that's going to run between the uni and the E&I. Essentially, even though the American provider is carrying that single EPL service as two separate OVCs that start at the uni, one with a high class of service and one with a medium class. That's because OVC services only support a single class. And I'm going to join those two point-to-point OVCs coming from the New York to an e-access high-class service with the French operator, and I'm going to terminate or connect my medium class of service coming over the OVC from the American service provider with an e-access connection of medium class there. What's also important to note, and this is illustrated on the bottom of the chart, is although the American service provider and the French service provider use different class markings in their own internal network, and they don't necessarily want or need to change that. However, at the E&I, using the MEF standard defaults for high, a class marking of 5, and medium, a class marking of 3, we can map what is being carried as high class of service on the American service provider, translate it into the common standard at the E&I, and then remap it into the 6 that's being used in the French operator's network. So this provides a high degree of transparency with respect to how classes of service are mapped between one network to the other, and doesn't require all parties to coordinate and use the same values. This is just one aspect of having a standard, one benefit of having a standard E&I connection between these two networks. So I'll just briefly mention the Carrier Ethernet 2.0 documents from services attributes. We've got MEF 10.2, which is all the attributes for the uni, MEF 26.1, which is all of our E&I services attributes. And from the service definitions, we've got MEF 6.1 and MEF 33. Those define our E-line, E-LAN, E-tree, and now in MEF 33 our E-access service. And then the capabilities that get mapped onto those, and the documents and the other documents that refer to delivering specific capabilities are MEF 23.1, the class of service implementation agreement, which is now in its phase 2 and really has a lot more meat in it than it did when the first phase. We've also got the Service OAM FM implementation agreement and Service OAM PM implementation agreement, with defining those layer 2 connectivity tools, along with ways to measure and track the performance of the services. And then the certification document. First and foremost, CE 2.0 is really a revision of the MEF's certification program. So we've got a certification blueprint that basically outlines everything that was being tested with respect to CE 1.0 and our 9 and 14, and a technical foundation document that maps all of the new criteria that are being tested and capabilities with the documents where the information comes from, or where the objectives come from. So I would suggest for all of you that are interested in CE 2.0, this would be where you would want to start. Basically start with review the services attributes and specs, map those into the service definitions, and then lastly, if you're interested in becoming certified, dive into the technical foundation document and the blueprint. Most of these documents are covered today in the Carrier Ethernet Academy's MEF-CECP bootcamp course, and then we cover and those that aren't covered in that course we've been covering in our postgraduate CE 2.0 workshop. So a little bit about the MEF-CECP program and our bootcamp course. So the MEF, the CE 2.0 is really first and foremost about certification. It's when the initial MEF 9 and 14 were announced, became available almost 10 years ago, there were certification programs for equipment and services. And As we saw earlier, there's just been a lot happening over the past 8 to 10 years with respect to new services, new interface capabilities, et cetera. And so CE 2.0 is first and foremost about certifying all of that. But CE 2.0 is also now about certifying the professionals who work with carrier Ethernet, day in and day out. The people designing and building the networks and equipment, those charged with marketing and promoting and working with end users to deploy Ethernet services and carrier Ethernet capable equipment in the network, and those standing behind that equipment that are testing and validation, as well as end user and customer support. So that's what the CECP program was really all about. When we envisioned the MEF-CECP program, the MEF envisioned the industry's only vendor-neutral certification program. So it doesn't rely on any one company's jargon. You don't have to learn the command line interfaces or how to configure any one vendor's equipment in order to become an MEF-CECP, unlike all of the other certification programs in the industry. So it also the CECP does more than that. By defining the first neutral certification program, it works to expand the carrier Ethernet subject matter expertise globally. So out of the 200 and some odd member companies that belong to the MEF, there are really only a few individuals, probably only around 200 or 250 globally, that attend the meetings, and less than that are actually working on within the technical committee and are familiar with all of the technical specifications and the work of the MEF. Similarly, if you work at a member company who's been certified, chances are there are only a few people inside of the organization that have actually worked with the MEF's authorized test lab to get that certification. So even in a large company, a tier 1 service provider, there may be a handful or half a dozen people inside of the entire company that understand the MEF service definitions, understand the MEF precisely defined terms, what's the difference between a private line and a virtual private line, for example. What are your limitations with respect to each one of those? And so the CECP program was designed to expand that knowledge beyond those half a dozen people to all of the people inside of a company that work with the technology, and it is really boosting the productivity of the companies that are now committing to the program. And there are a growing number of companies working in the carrier Ethernet industry, both service providers and equipment, that are now using this MEF-CECP cert as a job requirement, or using the MEF-CECP and pushing their top talent into training programs where they can prepare and become certified, and using that as career development. So we've nearly doubled the number of CECPs in the past 6 months, as you'll see, and that's as a result of some of the top companies in the industry really accepting the program and working it into their mainstream career development. So people ask me all the time, how does the MEF generations and the CECP go together? So a lot of people are concerned that, well, if we have the CE 2.0 exam, how much of that, or we have the CE 2.0 certification exam for equipment and service providers now, but the MEF Carrier Ethernet Certified Professional, isn't that just a 1.0 thing? Well, in fact, it's not. And the way I've laid out the logo, the Carrier Ethernet Certified Professional exam covers most of the aspects of CE 2.0. So it covers E-line, E-LAN, and E-tree, for example. It covers MEF 6.1, 10.2, MEF 23, MEF 26, and MEF 30. So there's a little bit that's yet to be defined with respect to CE 2.0. And the Carrier Ethernet Certified Professional exam will continue to evolve and advance to reflect the current work of the MEF. But it covers much more
from a content level than MEF-9 and MEF-14 did back in 2003 and 4 when they were developed, because the MEF-CECP was developed in 2011. So essentially, the program does cover a lot of the aspects, but not all, which is why we've been doing a CE 2.0 workshop at the end of our boot camp course. So the MEF professional certification, as I mentioned, we've nearly doubled the number of CECPs in the last 6 months. There's almost as of last week, there were approximately 775 MECPs around the world. Over half of those are here in North America. And it is a technical specification, so it's designed for technical sales and marketing people, and that's probably the fastest growing segment. People that actually are able to convert this knowledge into increased productivity that's tied to commercial capabilities and ability to earn more are really the people that are the first to appreciate the value in this program. But also network engineering, operations, product managers, product test and validation, and technical support who back up those customer-facing individuals also are benefiting from productivity gains in their job as well. So the benefits of the CCP certification for companies who leverage the program is that, just as I mentioned, it just increases the productivity and effectiveness of the company's workforce, both customer facing and internal. So it cuts down the back and forth between the customer facing folks and the customer having to go back to the product managers and ask, okay, what does this really mean? This is kind of what they're asking for. By being able to use precisely defined MEF terminology and concepts, sales professionals are much more productive at understanding exactly what the customer is asking for and how that maps into a service. Support people are much more comfortable with how their products work and are able to explain how those products and services work to the folks that they're supporting, and internally the development and the product management folks all have a common language across the organization that they can use based upon these MEF terms. It also eliminates time spent learning third-party equipment details. If you're not using vendor C's equipment in your network, and you're not vendor C who's building products, then you really you have to learn a lot of things in some of the vendor-based certification programs that may not apply to your actual to your actual job. So you've got additional time spent learning that for naught if you're not actually using it, and that time comes with some expense. And the program also identifies companies' commitment to building a knowledgeable workforce of Carrier Ethernet subject matter experts. So, people are very happy to get 20, 30, 70 people inside of their organization certified and have those CECP logos on the business cards. And it's almost become a one-upman style thing where there's several companies that are trying to vie for the top position with the most CECPs in the world. From the benefits of the CECP certification to the individuals is it basically demonstrates that you're a subject matter expert with a solid foundation in Carrier Ethernet. Of course, it recognizes your commitment to learn, as do any really continuing education or advanced degrees. It differentiates candidates who have attained the credential from those who have not. So it really speaks to your technical capabilities with respect to understanding Carrier Ethernet. And then the certification programs have also been proven to lead to career advancement. So a little bit about the exam itself. It's a rigorous 80-question exam that's given over an hour and 45 minutes. So you have 105 minutes roughly to complete the 80 questions. It's an online exam with multiple choice questions. It covers these 10 subject areas: definitions, transport and access technologies, EN&I and OVC services attributes, applications, a comparison with Ethernet services to other layer 2 like frame relay, and layer 3 services like IPVPN, for example. Covers Service OAM and a little bit about circuit emulation. And candidates must achieve 63% or higher, and that's a lot to learn. And in fact, it's left to self-study, in an undirected manner. I've read on Carrier Ethernet blogs where people have studied 2 hours a day for 8 months prior to successfully passing the exam, and using some of the other independent study tools, the results are quite similar. It takes a tremendous amount of time to figure out which of the 40 MEF technical specifications and related IEEE and ITU standards are the ones that are really the most important to understanding Carrier Ethernet and MEF service definitions, and then putting together a roadmap on your own to study for that is a very big job. I've got an example question here out of section 1. It's just to give you a feel for what's on the exam. And in fact, at the end of the webinar, I'll give you a chance to really find out what the exam's like and how you would do if you were to take it today or tomorrow. But essentially, here's the question: is a customer with 3 locations requests Ethernet service for very transparent connectivity between the locations. Which service best meets the requirement? And that is very indicative of the exam. It's very much application focused, where you're not just being asked to define an Ethernet private LAN versus an Ethernet virtual private LAN. You're being asked, you should absolutely know what those are and what their capabilities are, so you can apply it to this application where the customer is requesting very transparent connectivity. So if we look at the first part of the question, they have 3 locations. So that's going to basically tell us that we need a multi-point service of some sort, and that will eliminate any point-to-point services. Unfortunately, there aren't any point-to-point services in my 4 possible answers here, so we have to dig a little bit deeper into the question. And the next part, since the customer is looking for very transparent connectivity, that would lead us to select a single Ethernet private LAN or EP-LAN service. So the requirement for multi-point with very transparent makes EP-LAN the best choice because it gives full mesh connectivity. We're not sending packets as I would from an E-tree, from a leaf uni back to a root uni. Anybody can talk to anybody. I also, with the EP LAN service, have the ability to tunnel layer 2 control protocols, and the service provider is prevented from doing any traffic manipulation to CEV LAN or class of service bits coming from the customer's network. Once you pass the exam, or once you take the exam, you're given a post-exam assessment, and obviously, this person had some work to do. This individual needed to schedule a retake on the exam, and I didn't put this chart up to frighten anybody, but what I wanted to do is illustrate that this candidate did very well in the access and transport technology section. So his background was probably somebody that worked in the telecommunications industry, worked for a service provider or a networking company, and had a pretty good background in different access and transport technologies, but they lacked a lot of the basics with Carrier Ethernet with respect to the fundamentals, the components of the EVCs and OVCs and unis and EN and Is. They weren't very familiar with Service OAM or circuit emulation either, so they just needed to study up on MEF related topics and give it another go. So as I mentioned, as sort of a reward or compensation for attending our CE 2.0 Demystified webinar today, we'd like to present you the opportunity to get some pre-exam counseling. So you can request by sending us an email to info@carrierethernetacademy.com. We'll send you a link to take our free 20-question assessment exam, which is 2 questions from each of the 10 areas, and then we'll provide you with a test report similar to the one that we just looked at, and then we can use that report to counsel you on to what you would need if you wanted to self-study, what you would need to look at, or we could direct you into one of our upcoming boot camp classes. And the next one is actually being offered in Los Angeles, California next week. So we periodically, teach publicly held classes that are open to anybody. We also are available for private presentations. So we bring the Carrier Ethernet Bootcamp into a company and turn their turn the people that are responsible with selling, supporting, and delivering Carrier Ethernet services into subject matter experts in a short 3 days. So the course is 3 days long, and then we always proctor the exam at the end of the course on the morning of the 4th day, after students have had a chance to take our comprehensive practice exam and review the answers with the instructor. We've been doing a Carrier Ethernet 2.0 workshop as a postgraduate workshop, and now based upon demand, we've started incorporating the 2.0 material just directly into the course. So there are new aspects, new examples, new test questions being developed, on an ongoing basis that allow us to have, a very strong class that covers, not only the basics and the things that you would need to pass the CCP exam, but also all of the 2.0 concepts which aren't yet reflected in the exam. So that is our 2.0 workshop is now basically just being integrated into the course, and it's we can, and because of the methodology that we use to incorporate it, the length of the course it hasn't gone on any longer either. So that's the end of the workshop for today. If we've got any questions, I'll take questions. Just type them into the question part of the GUI on the GoToMeeting console. All right, I've got one here from a service provider that's asking, what if any were the surprises as people started working with CE 2.0? And this is, even though the question came from a service provider, it's also germane to equipment vendors. I think just the breadth of all the new capabilities, service definitions, interface types, and interface functionality takes people aback. Many people are just basically their jaws drop when they see how many new concepts have been introduced with CE 2.0 with respect to getting certified for both the OVC and the EVC services definitions, all of the class of service types, the new management capabilities, etc. There is just a wealth of new capabilities with CE 2.0, and that reach back several years, in fact, and test things that have been defined for a while, like the rooted multi-point E-tree services had never been tested before CE 2.0, and now service providers and equipment vendors have a chance to test to show that their equipment and services are compliant with those. So that's the number one. I get that question a lot, and that's why I developed the CE 2.0 postgraduate workshop, and I'm now just incorporating in the class, because I think that whether the information is covered on the exam or not, in order to really be a CECP, you should understand all of those concepts as well. So I don't see any more questions coming in. So at this point, I'd like to thank you all for attending. Please do take us up on our offer to either request the free assessment exam, or contact us at info@carrierethernetacademy.com to see how we can work together to bring our program on site, so that we can get you and your team completely up to speed with respect to Carrier Ethernet 1.0 and 2.0, and become members of the elite MEF-CECP team. So with that, I want to thank you all for joining us today, and I will wrap up. Thanks, and bye-bye.